Hey guys, and welcome to my first screencast for your notes for the remainder of the year. Remember that we are skipping the evolution test that was canceled because of our start for quarantine, and now we're jumping into taxonomy. Some of you went ahead and saw the viruses and bacteria and all the different kingdoms. We are not going to be holding you responsible for the specifics of all the different kingdoms. We're just going to, from this point, look at what you do have to know for this unit. So let's get started here. So with taxonomy, taxonomy, when we define it, talks about ordering things in a knowledgeable fashion. So basically making things really organized. When you have a folder, you have subfolders within it, right? And so taxonomy, not to be confused with taxidermy, is when you are naming things. When we think of like the scientific names of our different organisms, like humans are Homo sapiens. That's 2 words for our name. So why is this even important? Why do we bother with scientific names? Well, one of the big things is that sometimes when we use common names, it's not the same for each region. Think about when you see a pond and you think of the cattail reeds that are in there. Some people call those cattails. Some people call them reeds. In some regions, they are called bulrushes. So if we talk about them by their scientific name that I don't know off the top of my head, then we would know that we're all talking about the same thing. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, those little things that look like corn dogs on top of grass. That's what I'm talking about with reeds. We can also see evolutionary relationships when we use taxonomy. And when we look and say that, okay, they are in the kingdom animal, right? And then going into the next folder, they're in mammal, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. All of those folders being the same shows evolutionary relationships. So where does this all start? All the way back in Aristotle times, really old ancient Greece, he had already started organizing our living things into different categories. And at that time, we just knew that things were plants and they were animals. There was just the 2. What we later find out is things like mushrooms are not plants. So they can't really be organized with plants. They're also not animals, so they can't be organized with those either. So at this time, we still didn't even know about things like bacteria, so we had to, once we found out more information, then we started changing the system. And so then that brings us to Carolus Linnaeus. He is the one that gave us what we now use as our scientific naming system. It's called binomial nomenclature, which literally means a 2-name naming system. And this is what we still use today. So when we write out our scientific names, and I don't know if any of you recall, you see this little hello, my name is sign. All of our animals in the classroom had these little hello, my name is, and it said their name, and then underneath it said what their scientific names were. And all of the animals are with me, by the way. I guess I could go get their name tags, but I'm not going to because it's kind of far. And their cages are heavy. So anyway, the genus and then the species. That's the way that we write out these names. That when we say like humans are Homo sapiens, that's the genus is Homo, and then the species name is sapiens. When looking on here, you see that the genus is a noun. We're going to capitalize it. If you write it by hand, you're going to underline it. And then if you type it, it's going to be italicized. For the species name, it is going to be some sort of descriptive word, and it'll be lowercase. Again, underlined if you write it by hand, italicized if you are typing it. And then when we look at, for modern humans, Homo sapiens. Homo means man, that's a noun. And then sapiens means wise, which is a descriptive word, an adjective. So we have wise man, that's modern day humans. Then for common names versus scientific names. Again, common names are what is our common language. It depends on what region you're in of whether you would call it something or another. So like if you call something a puma or a mountain lion or a cougar, we're talking about the cat here, that would be all the same thing. They're all the same thing. And so when we use our scientific names, that tells us that we already know that we're talking about the same thing. So another reason that scientific names are good is that some common names don't actually put an organism into its proper category. So like when we see a jellyfish, it's not actually a fish at all. When we look at a silverfish, also not a fish. And then a crayfish, also not a fish. None of those are fish. And so scientific names help us make sure that we know that. All of these are invertebrates. Not a single one of them has bones like fish do. So how do we organize them? Get the rhythm of this. It goes domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Again, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. One more time. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Thank you for those of you who said that with me. Domain is the biggest category. There's only 3 of them. There's bacteria, archaeobacteria, and eukarya. Remember, you're a eukaryote, so that's where we fit. All the others are prokaryotes, right? And prokaryotes actually get split into 2 different domains. So bacteria, and what you see on here, archaeobacteria. You see that down here as well. So within bacteria and archaea, they have their own kingdoms within there. So there are 6 kingdoms: archaeobacteria, eubacteria, protists, fungi, plants, and animals. Then in each of these, like let's say that we go into the animal kingdom, right? You've heard that phrase before, animal kingdom. Then within there are different folders, right? Subfolders. Those will be the phyla. If we open one of those folders, there will be more folders for the class, and then the order, and then the family, and then the genus, and then the species. We get more specific as we move down this, just like species is the most specific you can be. And in parentheses here, you see a mnemonic device to help you with remembering this. So, dear King Philip came over for good spaghetti. I can spell it. Or one of the ones that I heard once, and it doesn't have domain in it, but it starts with kingdom, and it says, keep picking cantaloupe or Frank gets spanked. Whichever one helps you remember it. So then, when we have this hierarchy, taking a look, now we're going from the bottom to the top, going from kingdom to species, but look at how many different kingdoms there are at the bottom. And then, so it shows you in here that we're in the animal, we're going to go to the animal kingdom. So we have all these different animals within here. Then we're going to go to phylum Chordata. And so this means that all of these have a spinal cord. Then within all of those that have a spinal cord, we're going to go to the class Aves, which is the birds. So all of these are birds. Then we get into things that are more specific than what I know, but we move our way up into order, and then family, and then genus, then species, to get all the way to the cardinal. So see how the cardinal fits into each of these categories, and it got more and more specific as we worked our way toward the actual species, which is Cardinalis cardinalis. Pretty cool. Their genus name is the same as their species name. There's another one somewhere that I learned that was unce, unce, and I think it was one of like the big cat families, and I thought that was awesome. So with our 6 kingdoms, we have eubacteria, archaeobacteria, from this here, we don't really see what the differences are. But when we get to protists and everything else, they are all eukaryotic. So eubacteria and archaebacteria are prokaryotic. Remember, that means before a true nucleus. And then eukaryotic, meaning true nucleus. And so protists can be unicellular or multicellular. Versus all of these up here, plants, animals, and fungi are all multicellular. They're all eukaryotic. And then how are they put into their groups? Based on whether it's the number of the cells, how they get nutrition. Do they make their own food? Are they autotrophic or are they heterotrophic? Type of cells, physical structure. When we looked at homologous structures, looking at their DNA, any of that can be how we group them together. And so you've seen these cladograms before. We're just using another name. Phylogeny is showing a history of evolutionary connections, looking at our different species. And so then, as we move our way this way, we're saying that they have these common ancestors. And then as we get further out into these clades, that we will have each of our specific species. That's not new stuff. The cladograms are from the previous unit. So just remember how to go about doing that. And then with classification, why is it important? We're getting order out of chaos. And so to figure out what the scientific name is of a species, scientists use what are called dichotomous keys. So there will be two statements that you can say yes to one of them and the answer will be no to the other. And you keep following that until you get to no more options. It just tells you the name of a species. Oh, I skipped too many. Like here. So if we look for any of these leaves, let's try for A here. So we start at number 1. We always start at number 1. Has needle leaves, has non-needle leaves. Probably call those non-needle leaves, right? When you compare it to the others. So non-needle leaves, it says go to 3. Simple leaves, a single leaf, or compound leaves. This is simple. Something like this would be compound. And so we go to 4. Smooth edge or jagged edge. It's smooth. So it says go to 5. Was I just here? Leaf edge is smooth. It's a magnolia, and that is a magnolia leaf. Let's try B. So we start again at 1. Does it have needle leaves or non-needle leaves? Go to 3. Simple or compound? It's compound because it has the extra digits here. Go to 7. Leaflets are attached at one single point, like this one down here, or they're attached at multiple points, like they are in B, and so that's going to be a walnut tree. We're going to be practicing a little bit more with dichotomous keys the rest of this week, and just kind of be prepared for doing that, being able to solve a dichotomous key as well as make a dichotomous key. And it's nice to at least be, here and working with you guys again. I hope that you enjoyed this. This was very awkward for me. So anyway, I'll be seeing you.